I agree with you, Congressman.
Expired. Mr. Mills, your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, you went to Ranger School. You know all about the ideas of going to Darby phase and sitting up in Dahlonega, sitting in Florida phase. When you went through, based on your height, your size, or your physical strength, was your standards modified based on those things?
No, Congressman.
And do you feel that it would actually be something which is fair to modify Ranger School standards based on physical capability or capacity?
No, Congressman.
Mr. Levine, you just talked about, again, health and welfare. I've deployed multiple times, as has my colleague Mike Waltz and our chairman. And I can tell you that 180, 200-pound man with full kit, when he's shot and you're actually trying to pull him off the X, it doesn't matter your gender, it matters your capability, capacity, your combat fitness and readiness. So do you feel then that it should be based upon what your capability is or what your gender or other type of distinction is on whether or not you can perform those same duties?
So the performance in any MOS, in any assignment should be based on your capability for that assignment. And I agree with you, and I agree with Congressman Waltz that that should be absolutely standard-based. The question is whether the standard for fitness for participating in the armed services as a whole should also be a single standard, or whether it is okay for that to be a dual standard. And my view is we have lots of jobs that are, as you described them, where you have to carry a 140-pound kit or 200-pound kit or whatever it is, and you better be able to carry it if you're going to carry it. We also have desk jobs. We also have jobs operating.
But we have people who are actually having a different standard who are in those combat arm
I understand that. So the question is, can we let somebody into the service based on a fitness standard that is a gender-based standard for admission for accession into the service? It doesn't get you into a particular assignment because for that assignment, you have to meet the physical criteria
Well,
for that
let me ask
assignment.
this question, because this is about meritocracy. This is about putting meritocracy over the ideas of DEI and all these other criterias. And in August of 2022, the memo from the Secretary of the Air Force detailed percentage goals based on race and gender, what any reasonable person would see as an absolute quota, but yet we try to say that we don't have a quota. Can you explain where these resources were redirected from in order to reach the race-based quotas set out by the Biden administration? Anyone?
So, Congressman, this is, where I see a disconnect between the supposed primacy of merit and the insistence that quotas don't exist. Because that memo you reference establishes percentage-based goals, not based on where people live or how, what their income level was growing up, but based on their skin color and their sex. And so, again, that goes back to this two-sided coin that I don't think exists. Either we can admit those goals are meaningless, and the Department of the Air Force and the subordinate units don't do anything to make sure they meet those goals for white men or black men, or we can acknowledge that those are quotas. I don't understand what the difference is other than the label we give that policy.
Mr. Chabot, I absolutely agree with you, and I would argue the fact that most of this body actually believes in completely eliminating DEI, which is part of what's led to a deterioration, not just in the promotion of meritocracy, but also I think it's had a dire impact on our recruitment, and I think that we can acknowledge that we're at our lowest recruitment level since I believe it was 1973. And so my question to all three of you then would be, how do you see pronouns, and by the way, of course, we're the greatest when it comes to the battlefield. We can out-pronoun any of our enemies. We can out-he, her, and she, him all day. But how does pronouns, quotas, and DEI strengthen or diminish our armed forces? And I'll start with you, Mr. Levine.
What I would say about pronouns is that if there's a fundamental part of our military culture and our military values, which is treating others with dignity and respect. And I believe that that fundamental principle should apply in the case of somebody who wants to have different pronouns used, which is don't disrespect them, don't intentionally insult them. Now, do I think that somebody should be directed to use a specific set of pronouns, whether they believe it or not? No, not particularly. But should we treat somebody with dignity and respect?
I don't think it's about dignity or respect. I think that it's absolutely the idea of trying to put ourselves into these individual sectors and boxes for division when the military is about cohesion, unification, not division. Mr. Greenway, same question, if you would.
I don't see any benefit, but ultimately these ideas lead exactly to that, to quotas that ultimately come at the expense of performance and merit. And when the Secretary of the Air Force promulgates written guidance, it's not seen as something that would be nice to achieve, at least unless the military's changed radically, and I don't think that it has. Promulgated written guidance means that that's exactly what you're supposed to do. And so aspirational though they may be, instructions issued to subordinate commands means they need to be followed.
I absolutely agree. My time's expired, but I thank you, gentlemen. Again, I hope our armed forces gets back to not serving political agendas, but serving our nation, and that we can actually identify that meritocracy is the most important thing. With that, I yield back.
I want to thank the